Welcome to a second part of this tutorial, and in this second part we will focus on lighting one of the scenes that I recently made. So that's the scene that you can see in the background in this slide, and the way we will start that lighting is we will try to focus on the important areas of the scene. So we need to pick our main subject, which in this case it will be that front sphere, while that background machine will be more pushed to the back. We'll start by creating very simple lighting with a couple of area lights, and then we're gonna tweak render settings in the end and render two different cameras. And the knowledge that we gained in the previous chapters about light groups and how to set up light groups, we will use that to separate lighting into a couple of different light groups, and then with those light groups we will do compositing in the Blackmagic Fusion. So I just want to show you the project, that personal project that I recently did. So this is the final image that I did for that personal project. And when we start lighting this scene, we will delete all the existing lights and we will restart the lighting from the scratch and try to do something different than what you can see over here on the screen. So this is the main image, and if I switch to, that's the close-up, for example. I did a couple of cameras for this project. That close-up has a stronger depth of field, and that's also a different camera, more frontal camera for that machine at the back. That camera is focused on that slimy piece for the back of the sphere, and that's a computer, also close up on the face of that sphere. So that project was mostly modeled in Blender, and I use Blender these days to do most of my kind of like 3D concepting and hard surface modeling, because of the great plugins like HardOps or Box Cutter, which makes the whole process more streamlined. So this is that model in Blender. That sphere was modeled in Moi3D, which is a NURBS modeling package, and it's great for these kind of spherical shapes because you're not using polygons, you're using parametric surfaces. So booleaning all these surfaces, it's easier than doing that with polygons. That's smoke that you can see in the original image was also simmed in Blender and exported as VDB, and then I brought that VDB into Max and put it as VDB container in Redshift. So let me show you what we will do with today's tutorial and what we will do for the final compositing. So this image will basically be our final lighting for today's tutorial, and this is what we will create in 3D Studio Max, and we will render it as OpenEXR. And then because we have that flexibility of having multiple light groups in compositing, we will create multiple versions of with different color corrections for this scene. So this is gonna be the original one, and then let's go to, like, for example, this version also comes from the original one, but I was doing different color corrections for different light groups. And then this is another version, and another version which more green. This one has a little bit more fog, and this one is one dark version also. So all these versions are basically created from this original one because of ability to mix all these different light groups in different ways. Okay, so let's start with this next chapter now. So back in Max, I'll just select all the lights for the start, delete them. These VDBs, we don't need them at this point, so I'll turn that layer off. And I don't think I need those pipes for now, so I'll turn them off. So scene is like relatively simple to process, and it should be faster to do IPR renders. Let's just quickly check if RTX is turned on. So over here it's still like in experimental options, but after one point I think it's gonna be moved probably to output settings or somewhere else. So it is turned on, and let's do IPR render. It will take some time to send that scene to GPU. Okay, and switch to main camera. And I'll turn off bucket rendering. So first thing that I'll do is go to create and lights and create a dome light, Redshift dome light. The reason why this previous render was, so let's delete that dome light for a moment. The reason why that previous render looked like there was some light in the scene is because when there are no lights in the scene, the Max creates a default light. So let's create one dome light, and this dome light is using a simple color for now. Turn it on. So as I said, like this dome light is the first thing that we'll set up, and the reason is I want to find a good reflection map for these like highly glossy metallic surfaces. So I have a bunch of map on my D drive. Let's go to projects, textures, HDRs, and there is also these smaller HDR maps that I collected over time. Let's use this one for now. Okay, and then I'll switch that to, I think this is supposed to be a spherical map. Let's just double check. Yeah, it is a spherical map. So I'll start rotating that map until I find something that looks good. For the scene. Okay, I think this area looks relatively okay. One thing that I can also tweak is gamma. By default it's set to 1. So if we leave it set to 1, then it should be like as realistic. It should be relatively low contrast, and if I start increasing that gamma, then it creates more contrasty map, but at the same time it produces more intensity for the light. So what I'll do is I'll set it to maybe 2, but at the same time I'll just reduce intensity to maybe 0.0 by 0.01. I'll actually leave it as 0.1 maybe. Okay, so this looks nice because it gives it produces some reflection on that back machine, and also there are some like nice reflections for that sphere. And I should probably like lower it a little bit more, because when I start adding area lights it's gonna be much brighter. Okay, so that's my first HDR map. What I sometimes try to do is copy that maybe 2 or 3 times, and then this first one I'll turn off, and I'll turn all of them off, and for the second one I'll turn it on, and then I'll try some different HDR map. So let's say like this one over here, and let's increase intensity. So yeah, this one looks nice. Let's see what gamma 1 will produce with higher intensity. So this one looks relatively okay. If we start rotating, maybe we can find a better angle. Maybe something like that. Still has nice reflections on that glossy area. Okay, let's try another one. So select this one, click on, and let's try maybe some interior. This one. Okay, and maybe say to 0.6, and let's start rotating that light. And it's probably too intense, so I'll lower that intensity to let's try to 0.05, but let's lower also gamma so it's less contrasty. So even this one is creating some nice reflections on that sphere. So what I can do at this point is I'll save this image and I'll turn that light off. I'll turn this one on. Wait until it refines so you can see all the details, and then I'll save that one, and then I'll turn that HDR off and I'll turn the first one on, and then I'll save that one again. So after this point we can just switch in between 3 different HDRs that we just tested. So this first one I don't think it works very well, so we'll delete that one. Second one was relatively good, and the third one was nice. With the second one there is a little bit more like light coming from the top, while with this one, the third one, it's more like a front lit. So we'll use that. Let's see. Let's use the third one. So we'll delete the second one and then just focus on the third one. And we don't need these, so we can remove these test renders also. Okay. And what I'll try to do is maybe tweak it a little bit more so that specular is coming more from the right side. Although if it comes from the left side, then that machine will be darker while this one will be brighter. Okay, let's just leave it as it is. And let's see if we can tint it a little bit more towards blue. Yeah, that works nice. Okay, so now that we are done with that HDR setup, we can rename that light, set name to let's say HDR A, and for now I can lock its rotation so I don't move it accidentally. Save the file. Let's continue adding other lights. So back to create menu, or because I have a toolbar over here, I can just directly access some of the lights. So this icon is to create an area light, and we'll just click on that area light, and then we'll place in the scene. Let's run IPR again. Okay. For this light I'll place Y, and then as I click on that light and start to move it around, I can position it and rotate it based on the normal of the object. So we'll put it over here for now and push it back. For this one I'll increase the size of that light. So I'm going over here. Let's increase that size vertically. Rotate it a little bit more. And this one will be used more as a fill light. Let's lower it a little bit down so it's more focused on that sphere. And I'll start playing with spread so it's a little bit more directional. And I'll tweak the angle. Okay, let's quickly add another light, and this one will be a small light that goes behind the sphere, something like that, and thinner, and make it shorter. Let's put it over here so it's more like a rim light that comes behind that sphere. Let's see how that works. So this light, if we select it and set intensity to 0, save that image, and intensity to 2, then save it again. Then we can compare these two basically. The problem is that area light is hitting also the machine in the back. So what I'll try to do is increase that directionality, and that fixes that problem. So 0.6 will cast some light towards that machine in the back, while 0.2 will be more focused on that foreground machine. And I'll dim that intensity a little bit, and I'll push that color more towards blue. For the mode, I'll just use a direct color. .160 hue, maybe 220 saturation. So 2 should be enough. Let's focus on that rim light that's coming from the back, and I think it could be nice also to have some rim light that goes also stretches all the way to the top of that sphere. So I will rotate it a little bit and then extend it. Let's wait until it refreshes. Okay, I think that works much better. I'll also switch to color and push that more towards blue. Okay, for the intensity I'll set that to maybe 4, and that's gonna produce that nice rim around the sphere. So let's save that image and then turn off that light. And then save this one again. So this is without rim light and that's with rim light. You can see how it separates everything from the background. Let's turn it on. So what I'll do right now is I'll set up more like wide top area light, and it will be very dim light. So I'll pause that IPR for now. Let's copy this light. So let's just move it a little bit, press Y and then align it to floor, and I'll move it up and make it wider. and at the same time I'll copy this light one more time, copy, and tweak the length and width. This one should be more directional, while the other one can be, let's try spread one, so it's very wide, it's casting light in all directions. Just a little bit, push it towards back. Okay, and going back to camera, and then let's do IPR again. So it looks like intensity is not that strong for that top light. We'll try to crank it up to maybe 20, 60, and I'll play with spread just to see what kind of effect I can get with a different spread size. So 0.5 looks nice. That's set to 0, and that's 60. For this one, let's make it a little bit more saturated, so 240, and I'll try to push it to, let's not do purple, maybe like 165. Okay, I think that looks nice, and then maybe intensity should be a little bit lower. Okay. For this light in the back, since I already have, if I go to environment tab, I already have set up Redshift volume scattering. I'll turn on volume contribution, so let's try to 0.6. That's too much. We can also decrease intensity. So 0.3 looks relatively okay. For that we can push color more towards something reddish, or could be more on that side, closer to purple. Okay, that looks nice. So 245. Lower saturation, and then spread, let's try different settings. Point 1 is nice because it creates a lot of contrast in between dark background and that area where the light is hitting the background. But at the same time, maybe I don't want that much contrast, so I'll increase the spread and maybe just reduce the contribution for the volume a little bit. Yeah, that looks much better. What I can also do is I can copy that light one more time. So if I make a copy of that light, let's wait for a refresh. And then if I have lower spread for this light but stronger contribution, so I have basically this smaller light that's creating that stronger beam of volumetric light in the back, and then this one is like wider but less visible volume light. Could be interesting also to change the color, so let's try different things to see. This is actually nice. If I set it more purple, let's try intensity 0.2. Yeah, this looks okay. I can also set the angle to be different, which will cast that volumetric light towards the main sphere. so it's more biased towards the right side. And let's just push it back a little bit. I think this will be probably back even better, so it doesn't create that symmetry for the lighting that we had before. Okay, so we'll save that image, and if we turn off these top lights, we can see the difference with these lights off and on, just to see if it's beneficial to the whole scene. So you can see how before everything that was dark was kind of like blended together, while in this version, because of all the like volumetric beams, it separates it. You can see the form of these two objects more than compared to this one over here. So what I'll do right now is turn these lights back on, and I'll work on lighting for that background machine. We'll try to separate that background machine from that first foreground one, and I'll pause IPR for now. Copy that light, and let's start naming these lights. So this one will be L fog middle, and for this one I'll just use disk light with a smaller radius, and I'll position it behind that sphere. Okay, that looks fine, and for this one I'll push it more towards warmer light, so something more closer to red with a little bit of that purple tint. And let's try to add another light. Copy that one, put it somewhere over here as a rim light for that background machine, and let's position it something like that, and reduce the contribution for the volume. I'll just rename all the light groups for now from all the lights. Because we don't need them at this point. Okay. And then HDR, we can leave it as a sky light group. And let's start naming the lights. So this one will be L left A, L top volume A, and this one will be volume B, and this one will be top fill, and for this one let's do L right rim, L right fill. Okay, and I think our HDR has already like a name. So running IPR again. And let's first select that light that should be used to separate the main sphere from that mechanical object in the back. So for that one, let's tweak that color a little bit. I think it should be pushed more towards red, so that looks, let's try 10. I think 0 should be okay. So So 0, and then contribution 0.01 or 0.00. So we just need a little bit of that hint of that fog to reduce the contrast. So 0.003. Okay, I'll try to increase the spread to set it to 1, so it doesn't create that strong beam of light. And maybe like that contribution should be just a tiny bit stronger, 0.004. Actually, I think 3 was enough. Okay, so intensity, let's try to lower it to 20. That looks okay. And then select that left rim light. So 0, 10. This is too bright. Maybe somewhere around 1. This is probably okay. If I move it a little bit more towards back, I think that at that point we will get some of that light on the interior of that background mechanical shape. Okay, but in this case I'm gonna have to lower it to very low value. So 0.05. Okay, that looks nice. What I'm missing right now is something to separate that sphere a little bit more from the background. Actually, to like unify it a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll use one light that's closer to where the camera is. And if I turn camera on, that's my main camera. And then I'll put it somewhere over here. Let's set rotation to be aligned to floor first, and then I'll do 90 degrees rotation. And if I scale it so it's much wider and at a certain angle, let's see how that's gonna work. So main camera, contribution 50, and I think this angle is creating a nice effect, so I'll move it to the left side and then rotate it a little bit more. Now let's go back to main camera. Wait a second, and that color I'll push it back towards blue. Okay, and save that render, and then decrease intensity to 0. Save that render again, and let's see how much it contributes to that. Okay, it does create some nice sharp specular lines on the background object, so it's not purely black. Because in this case that object was very dark and then the foreground object was more lit, and when I have this light on, then there is a small transition. So this one is stronger, this one has stronger lighting, and then that part kind of blends in between darker lighting on the left side of that background machine and stronger lighting on the sphere. But it probably needs to be decreased, so if I deselect that and set that to maybe like 20, I think this should be probably enough. So what I'll try to do at this point is maybe play a little bit with that top area light. So let's save this version. And what I can do, I don't need to go and select that light directly in viewport. What I can do is go to Tools and Redshift light lister, and this will list all the lights that I have in the scene. And because we already named every single light, then it's easier to figure out which one is used for what. So I'll select, by clicking on that button, I can select left, right fill, actually not a left top fill, and I can tweak that intensity directly in this light lister, or I can go to render settings and then tweak that intensity over there. This is also like super useful because it will list all the lights that you have in the scene, and this will also create that kind of like a color palette of the lights that are used in the scene, so you can see if that color palette is working, if all the lights are working together, if it's correctly balanced. So let's try, if we set it to 0 and compare it to previous version. Actually, it was better when it was set maybe to 20. So let's try stronger setting. What if I crank it up to like 200 just to see what's going to happen? Yeah, that's way too much. So I'll leave it at 60. Right fill. Let's see if this one is doing anything. So if I do undo and refresh, let's set it to 2, but I'll push that saturation so it's even stronger. Yeah, I think that looks nice. Maybe 245. 165. Okay, that looks better. That was left. That was right. Actually, it's missing T. Right rim light. So 4 was default. Let's set it to 0. And back to 4 again. 8. Maybe 6 should be enough. Left A. Let's try to tweak that one. Yeah, 0.1 looks okay. Okay, so let's assume that's final lighting setup. I think it looks nice. It looks different than the old one. So what I'll do at this point is turn off IPR and then go to render settings and crank up these settings to do final render, and I'll just do 256 samples for now. And for adaptive threshold, let's use 0.02. For sampling overrides, 1024, and I'll just leave these settings as it is. Maybe this one should be like 512, because as I don't know if you remember, this setting is tied to maximum samples, so it always needs to be, this settings needs to be multiplied by 1, 2, or 3, or 4 times, and because if it's like 256, then it will cast only one reflection sample per pixel, but if I set it to 512, then it will cast 2 reflection samples per pixel. And anything in between those values will only cast 1 sample. So it needs, this is the threshold where it will cast 2 samples. And then go back to common, let's increase resolution a little bit and click final render. Actually, before doing a final render, let's turn on all the spheres in the foreground, and I'll turn on pipes, and I'll turn on VDB smoke, so we have everything in the scene. And let's do render again, and I'll just pause this render and wait for it to be done. So this is a final render. It took only 1 minute and 50 seconds basically to render this image, although it's relatively small resolution. So if we go to, I have like a bunch of these AOE passes turned on, but we will delete some of them that I don't need for the compositing, and we still need to create light groups, so that's something that I'll do next. So the only light group that I have defined right now is Beauty Sky, which is basically HDR lighting of the scene. And Beauty Other is all the lights that we basically placed in the scene. So let's go back to, let's check something else actually before going back to a scene and setting up the light groups. And if I turn off denoiser, I can see that there is still some noise left in the image. And if I go to reflection pass, I can actually see that that noise is coming from the reflection pass. So you can see a lot of noise in the background, some on the sphere, and especially on this machine over here. So what I can do to fix that is maybe crop like this one element, this one part of the image. I can go to output, and as I explained in that first part of the tutorial, if we go to sampling overrides, I can just increase the reflection samples over here. So I'm using 256 as a maximal samples for unified sampling, and maybe I'll try 1024 for the reflection samples. And then let's just save this image and do another test render, but I'll crop also a bit one part of that background where that noise is more pronounced. So let's do another test render and wait a little bit. And after I'm done with setting up reflection samples for the final render, then I'll just go back and set all the light groups, and then we'll kick off a final render and save everything as OpenEXR file. All these light groups saved in that EXR file, and then after that I'll show you a couple of compositing tricks where I'll just like mix all the light groups together, and we can change intensities and even like do some tinting per light group in Fusion. So this was the old setting and new one. So old, new. It looks much cleaner, especially like looking from a distance. So let's just keep it like that for now and go back to beauty pass. There is also like P pass, Z pass, which I don't think we're gonna need this time. Spectral lighting, so that's only for light direct hit of that direct reflection of the light sources, like area lights. And then there is a reflection, which are all the reflection that are left after that first specular bounce. And this is a beauty noisy, which means that this one is without NVIDIA denoiser. So this one is with NVIDIA denoiser and without the NVIDIA denoiser. So currently in Redshift, the only integrated denoiser is actually NVIDIA denoiser, and when I'm rendering final images I tend not to use it. I only use it for previews for now, because like what it does, it also like blurs some of the edges, which is not something that I want to do. So it's extremely fast and good for previews, but when it comes to final rendering, it loses like some of the details, especially like you can see it over here in the reflection pass. So one way to fix that is maybe to render image at higher resolution, maybe like 4K, and then downscale it to like 1 to 2K. That could potentially fix it. Okay, so let's go back to, we don't need this for now, and go back to the scene, and we'll start adding light groups for all these lights. So left right fill, let's just copy that name of the light, and I'll paste it in light group over here, and then this one is same, and skylight already has light group. Maybe this guy can be for middle, and select that one, left A. This one can be top volume A, and let's just name this one L top volume, and then we'll use the same name for this guy over here, because they basically the same I'm using it for the same reasons. So all these two cast volumetric light, and L top fill, I just paste that one, and I think that's everything. So Shift G to turn off geometry. Let's just double check that everything is named correctly. This one is not named, so L left A, and maybe we can rename this one left forward, and I'll just copy that and paste it over here. Okay, so Shift G, turn on Geo back again, and let's do another test render. So RV, render view, and if I go back to render settings, I'll just delete all these render elements that I don't need. So I don't need diffuse, filter, Z-pass, I'll turn it off for now, P-pass, emission I can leave specular lighting, maybe I can leave that one for now, reflections, I don't need reflections, so I'll just leave it as it is. So beauty pass, if I go into beauty pass, and if I go to light groups, it's set to reminder, and all light groups are selected over here. If you only want to render specific light groups, then I'll turn this setting off, and then I can control click to select multiple ones from that list, but for now I just keep it on. And you can do the same thing for the reflection paths. For example, if you want to split reflections for different lights, then I will just go over here and set it to all light groups, and then that's gonna give me multiple reflections passes for that. But for now I'll just use the beauty pass. And let's click render, and I'll pause that for 1 minute until. Okay, so finally that render is done. It took 2 minutes and 10 seconds to render that image, so it's a little bit higher than longer than the old settings, but that's because we are using more reflection samples for this one. And if we go to AOE passes, now you'll see that there is a beauty pass, and then there is a beauty other, which contains all the self-illuminated materials, and some GI I think in the background. And then there is L fog middle, which looks pretty cool by itself. Maybe we can do like one version with just like with this light and other lights that are more dimmed, but we can do that in compositing. And then there is left A, which is that left rim light. Left forward, this one is empty. I don't think this one has, this one probably has intensity set to 0. And then there is right fill, and then there is a right rim, and this is a top fill. This one feels that it's a little bit too intense, so maybe we can see what can we do like with that in compositing. Maybe we can just mask one area and use only top part, while the bottom part we can just remove. And then there is a top volume. I think if I combine maybe that top volume with fog middle, it can be like interesting version. And then there is a beauty sky. So this will be our final render. If we go back to render setup, if I go to common settings, I can click on save file, and I can actually save that file. Let's save it over here. Mother, and that's kind of like the name of the image, and let's name it camera 001, and then version 101, and then we'll save it as EXR file. So I'll just click EXR over here, and then when I click on setup, this one automatically remove render elements from render dialog. That should be on, and then save, and then when we do test render, that's gonna be saved directly into that file. So I'll quickly do like another final render just to save that to EXR, because the last one was not saved, and I'll pause until it's done. Okay, so it's done and it's saved into that EXR file, which is over here. And then let's do another thing before going into Fusion and to the compositing. I'll render a second camera, so camera 02, and if I go back to scene, I think that's this one over here, and I'll go back to rendering environment and turn on medium depth of field. Actually, let's increase this one, so I'll put it to 2. And then let's just try to do IPR for now to see how that looks. So camera 02 and IPR. It should take a couple of seconds to translate that scene to GPU. Okay. Yeah, I think that looks also nice. Maybe we can increase that depth of field even more, so let's try 4. Yeah, that background is nice and blurry now. So if I go to render AOVs for the light groups, so I'll think this one is keeper. We'll probably keep this one. Right field, I think we'll keep that one. This one will keep top field. This one looks kind of interesting, but I think I can just like mask some of the left part where that left background machine is visible, because it's probably like a little bit too strong. This one will keep beauty sky. This one looks nice. That's emission pass. This is only volume pass. Okay, so let's do another. So stop that one, and then I'll just do another final render for this camera. So this second camera is also down now, and these are all the passes. So as you can see, like some of the passes are still relatively noisy, So in this case, I think I'll probably have to crank up the render settings. So if depth of field is not this strong, then maybe maximum samples of 256 will probably be okay for the final render. But in the cases where there is a strong depth of field, and because of how depth of field works with specular reflections, I think this one needs to go like even higher. So even like going up to 1024 is actually could be something that you need to use to clean up all the noise. And then with that, when we go to 1024 for the max samples for unified sampling, I'll have to crank up also reflection samples. So this one, if in case like this one goes to 1024, maybe I'll have to crank up, increase this one to like 2048. But we'll just leave it as it is for now, because for compositing, I think it should be like probably fine. If you go to beauty pass, because this one is denoised, you can see how that NVIDIA denoiser is doing a relatively good job for the background. And this one is that's a noisy image, and that's denoised. So 1, 2. So we saved that EXR file, and now we will go to Blackmagic Fusion, and over there I'll show you how to bring all these render AOVs for the light groups together, and how to do final composites and color corrections for these two cameras that we just rendered.